Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Professor Dr. Ranjan Kumar Shaha, on behalf of the Department of Fashion Technology, NIFT Mumbai, I welcome you all to this webinar on the topic Apparel Export Industry Defining the New Normal. The COVID-19 pandemic has adversely impacted apparel export industry, causing order cancellation, deferral of orders leading to inventory buildup, and expectations of slower realization of export receivables leading to higher working capital requirements. To be able to reverse the effects of this massive blow on the apparel manufacturing industry, the industry will have to come up with innovative strategies and incorporate changes to accommodate the evolving needs of the masses due to the pandemic outbreak. So apparel export sector is facing new challenges, and now new normal is working through these challenges. Today's webinar is meant for exploring ideas. We will discuss about these challenges and their probable solutions. Today, our esteemed sets of panelists are from different parts of the world, which includes India, China, Bangladesh, Malaysia, and Ethiopia. Our first panelist, Mr. Anjan Mohanty from Ethiopia, who has been in this industry for last 22 years. He has been contributing to the apparel industry across India, Kenya, Bangladesh, and currently takes care of the entire business of Epic Group across Middle East and Africa region. He is recognized for developing teams of future leaders by creating a culture of organizational value, performance, innovations, learning, and sustainability. Our second panelist, Mr. Shashi Bhushan from Ethiopia, who has been in this industry for last 17 years. He has been contributing to the apparel industry across India, Ethiopia. He is associated with Raymond Group of companies since 2004 and had a major role in setting up different projects. Celebration Apparels Limited is one of them. Now he is director and country head of the Ethiopian operation for the soot plant project of Raymond at Ethiopia. Our third panelist is Mr. Vijay Kumar from Bangladesh, who has been in this industry for last 20 years. He has been contributing to the apparel industry across India, Bangladesh. Since 2003, he is working with PGI, Poetic Gem International, which is a UK-based design supplier to leading retailers in UK like ASDA, Tesco, Sainsbury, Next, Primark, etc. In present role of country director, he is responsible for taking care of financials, business development, service to the customers, and driving innovations. Our fourth panelist is Mr. Gautam Mukherjee from Bangladesh, who has been in this industry for last 20 years. He has been contributing to the apparel industry across India, Bangladesh. In the last 22 years, he has worked in various domains of the apparel industry, starting with garment exporters like Shibham and Richa, and then moving on to consulting with Technopack, managing projects across India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Kazakhstan. He then worked with William E. Connors as their quality head and later moved to target sourcing, managing quality and compliances. He is currently working as an executive director in Hamim Group, one of the largest apparel manufacturing unit in Bangladesh, managing both front end as well as back end operations. Our fifth panelist is Mr. Amit Mittal from India. He has over 24 years of professional experience in senior level international supply chain, product sourcing, and operations. He has worked with international retail brands and manufacturing-centric businesses where his customers have been in top 20 retailers in the world. As a textile industry expert, Amit has been selectively providing management consulting services. Our sixth panelist is Mr. Shauman Biswas from China. He has over 20 years of working experience and he is a fashion entrepreneur, innovator, and engaged in fashion business with 18 years of experience. His company, Smart Factory for You, works with global online retailers and boutique fashion brands to overcome their sourcing challenges, offering tech-enabled solutions. Being passionate about tech, he has turned his fashion sourcing company to a tech company. Our last panelist, seventh panelist, is Mr. Jordan Tang. Due to some urgent business, Mr. Jason Chen, the CEO of Gipro Global, who's supposed to join to our panel discussion today, could not join us for the webinar today. And however, uh, we have among us Mr. Jordan Tang from the same organization. Mr. Jordan Tang is the founder and executive director of Gipro Global, a leading RFID technology-based company dedicated to designing and developing innovative IT, IoT, automation, and productive solutions for the apparel, healthcare, and logistics sectors. He has 28 years of entrepreneurial experience in managing IT-based companies. So that was the introduction of our panelist. Um, now, let us start with our discussion with our esteemed panel members. To start with, I would like to ask Mr. Anjan Mohanty. Uh, as we know, the new normal is is in export industry is going through a crisis and facing new challenges. Uh, so my question is, uh, what are the new challenges which apparel export factory is going through due to COVID-19 pandemic? Yes, Mr. Anjan Mohanty.
Thank you, Dr. Anjan, for inviting me to this digital discussion on apparel export industry and the new normal. I guess having a digital discussion itself is the new normal going forward. COVID-19 pandemic has had sweeping ramifications across different types of industry, impacting millions and millions of lives across different strata of the society, covering all the continents, irrespective of caste, creed, and color. As per IMF, the global economy of 2020 is going to be the worst hit post World War II. We do not know whether we have hit the bottom or it's just the beginning of the impact. The impact on apparel industry has been huge because apparel is a non-spending, non-essential spending. We don't buy a new pair of clothes when we know we are locked down at home. Consumers have stopped shopping. Retailers have shut down outlets. Brands have cancelled orders, bringing the entire supply chain to a standstill and impacting employment of millions of lives, millions of workforce across the globe. The entire global apparel industry employs over 60 million people across the globe, out of which 75% are women. As per reports, millions of workforce has all lost jobs and many more to come in the near future. When you talk about the challenges, I want to differentiate the two as what are the immediate challenges that the industry is facing. I call them as survival challenges. Once we survive, we do not know whether this period is going to be 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, or 2 years. We just pray it gets over at the earliest. The challenges of short term, I would call them as short term challenges. The challenges of long term, I would call them the revival. Once we survive and we exist this period, we are there to talk about strategies of revival. Coming straight to the point, the challenges are few, but they are frightening. Like I mentioned, millions of workforce have lost their jobs in the apparel industry. So the first strategy or the first challenge that all of us are facing across the globe, retention of employment, number one. Number two, the huge cash crunch this new pandemic is creating, because we know that customers have actually cancelled orders. They have pushed back deliveries, so the goods that are produced on the floor, we're not able to ship. And the goods that have been shipped, they're actually changing the payment cycle. So there's no inflow that's going to come into the system for next 6-8 months. But the fixed and operational costs are going to a great extent descend, depending on at what percentage or at what capacity you are actually employed. So where does the cash come from? How many investors, how many manufacturers really have? We actually all work on very small margins. We do not work on a 20%, 30% margin. The business is so tight, we all work on 3 to 5% margin. Do the investors have enough money to actually survive this period of pandemic? And last but not the least, ours is a very labor-intensive industry. For factories which are operational across the globe, how are you supposed to run operations with social distancing and actually following norms which will curb the spread of this pandemic? I think broadly, my thought of the current challenges are this. Going to the future, which are the revival strategy, I always feel the way we bought a garment, the way we produced a garment, the entire concept will change from field to shelves. There will be a huge need for, the entire global destination of sourcing will change. That's my prediction. I'm sure the other panelists can be their views. What has this pandemic done? It has actually opened up people's eyes of putting all their eggs into one basket, over depending on China for sourcing. So the global destination of sourcing will change, and brick and mortar retailers will be out of the cell. There'll be huge online platforms that will be created to actually, for buyers, for brands and retailers to showcase their products. The fashion shows will be live streamed, like you have seen in February when Armani Exchange did not display their products and went on, that live stream. So the whole concept of buying, selling, retail spaces, getting more online, the concept of digital platforms like Jood, which all of you must be aware of, will come in. So the buying patterns will change. The inventory cycles will change. All this, the entire supply chain is getting digitalized. This will actually throw a lot of pressure on the back end on people who actually run manufacturing units like us. How do we innovate? How agile we are, how nimble we are, how flexible we are. Gone are those days, or post-COVID-19, the challenges are about flexibility, are about agility, faster throughput, are about innovation. The only good thing that COVID-19 is brought to all of us is a sense of health and hygiene. There will be a greater demand for products that are produced in factories which are compliant. There will be a greater need for innovation. There will be a greater need for sustainable products. I think the whole concept, how we produce a garment, how we buy a garment, will completely change. That's my feedback, Ranjan.
Yeah, thank you very much. You have given a lot of insight on that particular point, and I can understand that there's a lot of challenges are there. Maybe out of which maybe you have mentioned few. Maybe in addition to that, there can be some challenges also. But let me ask you some specific questions on those challenges which you have mentioned. Now, during COVID-19, there's a need for social distancing and proper sanitization measures, right? And you rightly said that it is basically garment apparel industry is basically a labor intensive industry, where those who are working, maybe they are not, very much educated, and to make them understand about this concept and all those things, again, is really difficult. And again, when number of workers is too many over there, So my question to Mr. Amit, uh, uh, what are the different measures normally apparel export factory normally will going to take regarding social distancing, sanitization, safety measures, and what kind of hurdles the industry is facing in implementing these safety norms, new safety norms, I will say. Yeah, Mr. Amit.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ranjan. Uh, I think the factories of the future will change, and social distancing will be a norm going forward. The people have to starting from their home. I think they will be using the transport, the buses, etc. Needs to have a proper distancing maintained of around 4 to 6 feet. The attendance system in the factory, uh, maybe the biometric may not work, but face reading can be an option that can be adapted. When the workers are entering to the factories, I think temperature check is the must going forward before they admit to the factory. And it is mandatory for the people, for the workers, to wear the gloves, cleaning and disinfecting tools, etc. And even the spacing of the workstation will be around 6 feet to 8 feet. A part of there'll be a square or a circles which will be marked on a factory shop floors, so that the people can use maintain the distance. And even on the meeting side, I think factories may not have the virtual the one-on-one meeting. It will be more of a virtual meetings that will be conducted, and it has started already. There are also, like, the garment factory needs to think about working in shifts if it is possible for them, because the complete strength of the people may not be adjusted in the factory. So they might have to go to multiple shifts or stagger the working. Even the inward of the employees, I think it needs to be staggered a little, so that people don't assemble together in one area. And even like the breaks, during the breaks, if it is possible to have it in open space, that will be good. Otherwise, stagger the breaks also, so that social distancing can be maintained. Even a part of this, I think there'll be a lot of other sanitization things which needs to be done, like sanitizing the entire shop floor once in a day minimum, to ensure that any kind of infection which is left out or is there, it's been taken care of. And also, like, if any of the worker is even after entering, if he's not well or having a fever or something, he should be immediately checked for the issue, and if possible taken to the doctor for the further consulting. And these are the things that I feel will be important. And even the containers which are coming in the factory, these needs to be disinfected before the people start loading and unloading those containers. That's it, Ranjanji, from my side.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Amit. In fact, Mr. Gautam, who is in Bangladesh, I would like to know from Mr. Gautam that he is in Hamim Group. So, it's one of the biggest company in Bangladesh. I mean, how you are taking, what kind of precautions you are taking on these particular things, like social distancing, sanitization, and all those things, how the factories in Bangladesh, they're doing on this, working on this particular thing. Yeah, Mr. Gautam, please.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjan. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. As Amit said, I will follow the same footsteps. Sanitization starts right from where the workers come in. Their thermal scanning is very important. So that's mandatory for every worker, every staff member who are coming into the factory. Secondly, we have created some sanitization booths at our primary gates. So every worker, every staff has to pass through these sanitization booths, walk through them. Their feet are also being, the shoes that they are wearing, they have to walk through a disinfected mat, so that any infection they are carrying through their the shoe that they are wearing is also get disinfected. Apart from that, we have created a lot of wash basins, so every worker is been instructed to wash their hands before they get into the factory. Once they are onto their shop floor, the first thing that they do is their hands sanitized by using sanitizers. And another important thing that we have implemented is the workplace engineering. So what we have done, we have made the workers sit opposite with their back facing each other. So none of the workers are facing each other, and there is a plastic covering around the workplace, so that there is the minimum movement is there. Initial few weeks, it was a big difficulty in getting all these things implemented. So what we did and what our HR did brilliantly was awareness. So we did a lot of awareness campaigns. We did a lot of video presentations. We did a lot of miking in the factory, and slowly and gradually, we are seeing a lot of adaptation and absorption of these awareness is being taken by the workers. So now the workers are coming up to us and asking us certain questions on their personal hygienes, and they are being more aware. So this I see very positively, apart from the pandemic situation, that every individual is getting more conscious from a personal hygiene standpoint. Thank you, Ranjan.
Okay, thank you very much, Gautam. Gautam, the thing is that in many of the places in India, we have a garment unit, but not very organized. In fact, a small garment unit. In those kind of places, it will be a little difficult. There is a problem over here to implement all those systematic things. But in Bangladesh, there are a lot of organized garment factories are there. Big garment factories are there. So, maybe in some companies, there are 500 or 1,000 or maybe more than that. People are working in one factory. Do you think that they can have some kind of, isolation center? I mean, where, those people whom they think that can be kept if they have any, suspecting those persons, or maybe sometimes, they have daycare unit also. I mean, they used to keep their child over there or something like that, where, if some kind of provision can be done over in those particular big factory, I'm saying. That can be in any place, in India, Bangladesh, any place.
I feel in Bangladesh, small or big, irrespective of that, isolation centers are there in every factory. Every big and small apparel manufacturer is having an isolation center in their factory. They are having specialized doctors and nurses to attend any kind of emergency that is there in the factory. But as I said, that the thermal scanning is helping us a lot, and any kind of signs of having temperature or the body doesn't look good or fresh, there is a kind of a medical attendance that's been provided at the gate itself, and the worker has been immediately transferred to that isolation center for an initial medical testing that is being done, checking of the basic symptoms of COVID, and if anything is found indicative, due action has been taken followed that. So I think most of the factories in Bangladesh are having isolation centers. Big or small, what kind of equipment they have, that's irrespective, but isolation center is it's there in most of the factories.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Mr. Gautam. Mr. Soman, yeah, yes, please.
Yeah, I'll just pitch in to what Mr. Amit and Mr. Gautam has already explained. Ethiopia being a different country where language is a big barrier, and the people come here with many tribes. Like the area where we are in the southern region has got 52 nationalities itself. So what we have done, in addition to what Mr. Amit and Mr. Gautam has covered about COVID-19 isolation and all that, social distancing, that we took help of the regional government as well as the Ethiopian Primary Health Institute, and we created a awareness program in the whole industrial park. And in Ethiopia has presence of many donor agencies like USAID, GIG, DFID and all that. So we have industrial association here in this industrial park. So with the help of Investor Association, we reached out to those donor companies to see if we can get some fund. So with the ILO has given us some funding, DFID has given us some funding. So we have bought a lot of PPE equipment, which we're distributing to all the 60,000 workers working in the industrial park. In addition to that, at the factory level also, we called in those EPHI, which is Ethiopian Primary Health Institute doctors and trained professionals to come and give a specific training to all the local graduate staff, as well as we have a worker council members here, and especially for the canteen workers and all that. That what are the minimum or maximum, what is the best that can be done to maintain hygiene pertaining to the health, and how do we deal with the COVID-19. In addition to that, we took help of the city administration as well, because all the workers who are working for the park are basically residing in the area which is in the radius of 5 to 10 kilometers. And we took their help to go to the cluster where our workers are staying and educate the owners of those houses where our workers are residing as well. So with the help of the city administration, with the regional government and the Ethiopian primary health professionals, we have been able to cover it up not only at the factory level, but at the areas where our workers are living as well.
Okay. Thank you, Shashi. Shashi, you said that PP kit they are using PP kit for working. The workers are using that?
No, workers are using in terms of the mask, the soap, sanitizers. Okay. So we prepared a package of that, and on a monthly basis, we have started giving it to them. Because we are not sure that if you do not give them, will they be buying from their own earnings or will they be using it? But since we have a funding from the donor agencies, so we got the fund and we're using that money.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Shashi. Now I would like to hear from Mr. Shauman. We have heard that what is happening in India, in Bangladesh, Ethiopia, and Mr. Shauman, you're in China, so maybe you can say if they are doing something. All right. Yes, Mr. Shauman.
Shauman, your mic is off.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me for this webinar. I would not spend too much of time because I think most of the points has been covered by other panelists, and generally what are the trends, what they are following is more or less is the same what we are following here, nothing much different. So, I think Mr. Amit and Gautam and Shashi has covered much more in detail. So I would just sum it up that whatever they said is generally followed here as well. Thank you.
Okay. In fact, my next question is during COVID-19, there's a severe disruption on supply chain industry having excess inventory and less working capital, which Anjan said that this is one of the major challenge. So shortage of working capital is a big challenge for the industry, and that is across the globe, definitely for all the export factories in any part of the world. So my question to Anjan, what should be the strategy of the industry to mitigate damages in their business because of the shortage of prices, shortage of working capital? Anjan?
Thanks, Ramjan. Okay, so huge amount of collaboration is what is required between brands, between government, between funding agencies, between financial institutions, and the employers of organizations too. I'll just throw a little light of what I know, how different countries are actually handling this. I do not know. Governments are actually giving stimulus packages across the industry. I mean, for example, Bangladesh government has actually given a stimulus package of close to $600 million because, like you rightly mentioned, Bangladesh, for them, 85% of their apparel exports, to the total exports is from apparels. So that's a bread and butter industry for them. So that's something, and they have given soft loans to manufacturers to ensure that they pay salaries to employees and not lay them off. So there has been funding by government. For example, if you look at financial, institutions, European Union has gone ahead and given, I don't remember the number, few $billion to the Myanmar, employees. So there has been funding from government is one key. I have not heard brands, I might be wrong, really coming up and rising to the occasion and being, but there's a huge amount of partnership that's required from customers, from brands, because they have always partnered. The people at the manufacturing end, and they need to show that alliance during tough times. Financial institutions, they need to look at soft lending. Whether they are banks, they need to look at how, they can support the situation. I think a great amount of collaboration is required from government agencies, financial institutions, banks, and employers to fight the current crisis of the cash crunch or the liquidity of assets that we are talking about for the short term.
Okay, so there should be a very good collaboration between the buyers and the manufacturers and the government, so that they can cope up with this kind of situation. So you understand. Now, Mr. Amit would like to say something on it, how to deal with this shortage of working capital.
Yeah, I think it is important that we take up immediately that we have a customer first policy. That is the most important thing that we need to do. How we dispose of our stocks, like having a loyalty program for the customers, or even having a kind of a regular communication with the customer, so that at least we are communicating to them and we are telling sending them offers, having a lucky sales or something like that to the customers. Next thing will be how do we protect our revenue and collection. That is the most important thing. Like we can offer discount, we can ask for a part payment, negotiate the contracts, other thing. I think this is, then there can be how do we manage cash flow, as we have not done it ever before. I think we should assume our payment will be almost double as of now. I think most of the people have already experienced that. We need to, I think, re-budget our cash flow in terms of expenses, in terms of zero-based budget, wherein like we need to see each and every expense from the scratch. It's not like what was spent last year. That should not be the benchmark for us at the moment. I think we should just start with as if we are starting as a new fresh. We should redefine our outflow in terms of expenses or anything. I think layoff is not a solution. What I'd seen, I think maybe it is more important that we defer the hiring and then renegotiate. Even retailers, what they are doing, they are renegotiating the rents and other thing. So these things are happening. The government has also come back in India, like they have come back with a PF scheme. The TDS scheme has been announced, and even the banks have come back for the loan monitoring period extension. So that those kind of schemes can be utilized to support them in terms of working capital. I think inventory is the biggest thing that people have to manage. I think we need to ensure we reduce our inventory by 30% minimum, and we should try to reduce our suppliers, trims or packaging suppliers, by 30 to 50%. That will help us to consolidate the transport and work and get the better pricing from them. Even on there are certain norms that inventory norms should be followed, like ABC strategy and all that. Then we should also work on clean as much as possible and get rid of excess inventory by discounting, disposing, or even selling it in the secondary market. I think digital is the new adopting or embracing digital platform will be the new thing that people have to come up with in terms of offering on an e-commerce platform adapting to it and having, because that's where a lot of traction is happening all over the globe. And I think it is most important that we communicate. I think we don't under communicate or even over communicate on anything. We should avoid false reassurance to the workers. Like we should, I think, share the continuity plan with them and talk about what company is doing to overcome the situation. That will help to at least workers understanding the problem you are in, and also they can be a part of that journey. And most important, I think, is the be positive. I think that's the most important thing. I think people should do yoga and meditation, so that at least it will help them to uh, think of different things, new things that can be adapted. And I think this is the right time for to transform the business. That because if what the things which you were planning in the past but not able to get the time, this is the time that you can think about it, and then start working on those new things, be it innovative ideas, or be it discontinuing non-profitable product, anything. I think even the marketing strategies needs to be remodeled, because now travel will be reduced phenomenally. So there must be definitely the other platforms like virtual showroom and online meetings and other things that can be done. I think e-commerce is a priority that I see going forward. Thank you, Ranjan.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Amit. So basically, you have said many points, but the main thing which I can understand is you have to reduce the operating cost to have an immediate solution on that thing. Maybe you need to reduce the inventory also. You need to have some mechanism for that. Mr. Shashi, would you like to say something on it? Mr. Shashi? Hello, Mr. Shashi?
No, I'll just add a couple of things on that, saying that the working process to the idea is that how do we reduce our working capital which got stuck. So all the factories have to move on to lean manufacturing systems, how to have a sort of throughput time, sort of lead time, and then the whole supply chain has to be agile. Right? Normally from the concept of, from the push production system, that we need to move into the pull production system. And we need to work on the takt time, basically, that whatever is the pull, going from the warehouse, the pull is there, we'll be bringing in the same amount of material, and everything has to be defined, structured, a lot of training has to be done, a lot of technology has to be looked into, that what are the technologies that we can bring into, which will optimize our efficiencies, and which will be basically showing a data which can be used for the management decision making. This is what I could add into what Mr. Amit has already covered.
Mr. Gautam, I hope in Bangladesh also they will be having the same kind of problem, right? So can you say something on it?
Basically, this is a crisis at both ends. It's a crisis at the brand end, and it's a crisis here. It's a global crisis, right? So I think in our suggestion, what we have done is that we have an open dialogue with our brands, and there have been, you just need not to be just a manufacturer. In this kind of a crisis situation, you need to be a service provider. What I mean by saying that is that we have also started talking to our big retailers of warehousing facility in the United States. So we go to export the goods, hold it at United States at their destinations, and we're going to release the goods nearer to a shipping date or their demand from their stores and their departmental online sales. So it's a two-way relationship. So we have extended our partnership there. Secondly, on a cost reduction basis, we have also tried to not only look at the manpower cost, which is my direct cost, but also we have tried to look at the indirect costs that we have been incurring. So that have been relooked. We have relooked at our, all the expenses that are flowing out. So what Amit said, our outflows, we have relooked at it, re-engineered at it. So all the nominations that we have from a supply chain standpoint, we were working with LC at sites, we were working with LC at 25, 30 days. those have been renegotiated. Those have been, as our customers have renegotiated the paying terms with us, in the supply chain at the back end, we have renegotiated it with our suppliers. And that has given us some breathing space in between so that, the cash flow can be managed to meet our daily outflows. I think most of the points were covered. This is what I can add from my side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now my question is to Mr. Vijay.
I just want to add
Tell me.
points of coping up with the working capital.
Yes.
So one opportunity for the manufacturers could be to look for, non-conventional alternate sources of income. Like, I know a lot of factories who kind of got into unconventional things, like they got the sealing machines imported, and then they started making PPE and the masks, which was of great help, because everyone was looking for PPE and everyone was looking for the masks at one point of time, and still it is going on. So looking at alternate sources of revenue, non-conventional, like if you're making a garment, that doesn't mean that you can make only bottoms, you cannot make PPE. So there are factories which have shown that kind of vision and gotten the machines like seam sealing machines and gotten into an alternate product category and generated the revenues to bridge this gap of working capital. So that is also one area which can be looked at.
Okay, that means what you mean to say is some of the lines can be dedicated for that particular thing which is immediately required PPE,
Yeah,
so that they can have some immediate cash in hand.
Absolutely, and those are required right now domestically as well as international markets. So those things are in big big demand right now. So that is one area which can be looked at.
I think
yes, tell me.
I think what Mr. Vijay has just mentioned, I think I have come across also in Malaysia, one company during this crisis, they normally they make sportswear, but during this crisis, they adapted their environment to manufacture face masks. In fact, they have a big order from Singapore government making fabric type of face mask for about 10 million pieces order. Another company that I come across in Vietnam, they have an order of 300 million pieces of face masks order from the government of France. So and also now they are setting up another factory next door to it to make only PPE going forwards. So I think the manufacturer have to turn to be adaptive to the new challenges, new opportunity.
That means they can export it. I mean, they're getting export order for that. You have to say, Mr. Jordan.
Yeah, and the situation is such, Dr. Ranjan, that it is more to with the survival of the fittest. Like that. The companies which are able to adapt to the new realities are going to survive. So there is a lot of consolidation which is going to happen at both the buyer level as well as the customer level, at the supplier level also. So yeah, adaptability is going to be the key for the future.
Mr. Anjan, would you like to say something on it?
I'll just add.
Mr. Anjan?
If you wanted to speak something, please go ahead.
Okay.
It's just that before this call, we had a call with the Ethiopian government, with the Prime Minister of it and Ministry of Health about supplying of the PPE for the requirement for the government of Ethiopia. And one of few companies, like my company is one of the company, and Mr. Anjan's company, we are supplying to government of Ethiopia. We have re-engineered our manufacturing processes to meet the current requirement of Ethiopian government for the PPE product in terms of coverall, is what Mr. Vijay was talking about the seam sealing machines and all we have imported. And we're importing all the raw material, we have set up the supply chain, and we are fulfilling the requirement of government of Ethiopia as well as supplying to other African countries as well. And as Mr. Vijay talked about, that if money is not coming from our customers because of either the stoppages of orders from their side or the change in the payment terms, so this has really helped us to bringing those cash to run our operation. on a daily basis as well as on an immediate monthly basis.
And one last point, Dr. Ranjan, on the same thing, it's just being adaptive to the new realities. So let's say we got these seam sealing machines now, and a lot of Indian factories I know who have also imported seam sealing machines. So what is that going to do now is once, let's say that they don't need these PP, they don't need to make PP suits anymore. So that they can use the same machinery to do outerwear, which is a non-existent product category out of India right now. So it is looking differently at the things that you are doing and then how to make best use of it. So it's like looking opportunity in adversity. So there are a lot of factories who have imported the machines and they may not need it in next 2 years time when once this epidemic is over and you don't need PP suits anymore or there is enough supply of that. So they can use the same machines for outerwear, which right now I think 70-80% of that is being exported out of China.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Vijay. In fact, I want to ask you another question.
Yeah.
As because you were working in a buying house and you were managing the retail also front end. There can be a change in customers' purchasing behavior, buying pattern. Customers might not be interested in buying, non-essential fancy items or clothing, or customer might buy lesser quantity than earlier, or fashion clothes compared to basic and essential category garments. So this kind of changes might come. Now in this situation, industry might face a new challenge in how they can adapt the changing need of their customers' demand and can deliver the best. So my question is how the Apple export sector should be agile to cater the market demand, because market is changing very fast.
Right. So you rightly said that market is changing very fast. So first of all, I don't want to, but actually, if you tell you the truth, the stores in UK were closed for 2 months. Most of the retailers were closed in the European market and the American market for about 2 months. So a lot of these customers are carrying over the inventories from spring summer 20. So the first bad news which I'm going to break to you guys is that SS21 orders would be less by 30 to 40% of what they normally place the orders, because they're already having the inventories from this season. Number one. Number two, there is a lot of distress, financial distress in Europe and America right now, which is due to the people losing their jobs and there is salary cuts and stuff like that. So the people would be looking for the value. People would be looking for the bargains. And at the same time, when you have less orders to place and the supply chain is more or less same, so it will become a buyer's market. So they would be looking for the best prices, and the only way to make a place for a supplier or manufacturer would be to have a unique proposition in terms of pricing, in terms of sustainability, in terms of performance fabrics, in terms of performance fabrics like antimicrobial and antiviral sort of fabrics. In addition to that, since the pandemic situation is still not over and people are still not going out so much, so there would be people who are going to buy more and more online than conventional brick and mortar stores. So what will happen with that is when more and more people are buying online, so they need a bigger width of the choice. The customer, the retailers would be offering them a bigger width and lower depth, which means more styles and less volume. So to cater to such demands, the factory will have to be more and more agile, more flexible, to be able to do smaller runs, change from one product category to another product category, another product category to another product category, because the volumes will not be so much. And driving efficiencies, doing such smaller runs is going to be the key. going to be deciding factor which countries will emerge as winners and which countries will emerge as losers from this kind of equation. And since in Western world the stores have started opening, so initial indications that we are getting is that in terms of product, there are certain product categories which are selling, and there are certain product categories which nobody's even touching. Formal wear is totally out of the equation because there are no meetings happening, no office meetings happening, so that is totally out of equation. Product categories like loungewear, the tops, because most of the people are doing their meetings out of the home, so it's the top category which is still selling, but not so much of bottoms. Casual bottoms is getting a lot of fit, outerwear is getting a lot of fit, and it's loungewear, it's easy wear which people buy, wear at home, those kind of product categories which are selling. So that is another thing which we need to keep in mind as manufacturer, to fine tune our manufacturing to cater to those kind of products for the near future.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Vijay. Really very informative. In fact, now I would like to ask Mr. Jordan. One of the major challenges in India's apparel export factory is lower productivity level compared to countries like Bangladesh and China. If the productivity level in India is not improved, India will lose its competitive advantage. Now, technology upgradation can play a crucial role in Indian apparel export manufacturing. So my question to Mr. Jordan, what are the technologies to be adapted by the Indian apparel export industry to remain competitive in the world market? And on the same note, the next question is Industry 4 module, which is at nascent stage in India's apparel manufacturing industry. How relevant and effective it is in the process of value addition? Mr. Jordan, please.
Yep. Thank you. In fact, before talking about introducing technology of any sort, it is always necessary to be ready, because there will always be barriers to introducing new things, new technologies. Human factors, resistance, skepticism, and affordability, and all those are factors which has always in place in terms of adoption of technologies. So what I'm saying is that the company, before they introduce any new technology or adopt any new technologies, they must first of all get their house in order first. They must get themselves ready first. Doing the basic. In fact, a lot of productivity and quality improvement can be achieved and accomplished without using technology. It's a matter of getting people more disciplined, management upgrading, and more training, and so on. So that is one point which I would like to stress before we talk about technologies. A lot of things can be done to improve the productivity without introducing new technologies. Of course, we are in an era of digital era, and a lot have been mentioned about e-commerce going forward during this time. And and also supply chain connectivity, bringing all the parties in the whole supply chain closer together so that the information and communication could be effective, and like product development can cut short the time. In fact, talking about technology, there are whole spectrum of technology that can be adopted. That has already been applied in other industries, can be adopted into the garment industries. We are talking in terms of Industrial Revolution 4.0, IoT, and RFID, automation, AI, and all that. Those are already in place, except that some technology may be more mature than others. So one have to be very clear whether what are they looking for in terms of what are the area they want to improve. If they are talking in terms of the new way of selling, In fact, I was just thinking that a lot of manufacturers will eventually turn into retailer. That is what I foresee, because then because to start a online e-commerce platform is not difficult, and it's within reach. If one company doesn't have enough type of style or types of products to sell, I would suggest that a cluster of a few manufacturers who are friendly to one another can actually form a cluster and then sell all their product online using the same platform, perhaps even build a brand of their own. You know, what all the big brand today may not be the big brand of tomorrow. With the new technology available, we have seen new brand emerging as a result of e-commerce opportunities. So I think during this kind of a situation of pandemic, it gives us more room and to reflect and to examine the way we have been doing business. Going forward, do we still have to do the business the same way? Not just for production, but also in terms of selling and bringing the products to the markets. Just now, and so in terms of Industrial 4.0, yes, they are helpful, but a company has to be getting themselves ready, because there's a lot of mindset change. A lot of time it is the human factors when it comes to introducing technology. Take for example, just before the COVID-19 pandemic, how many people were using Zoom for meeting or conferencing? But during this whole lockdown situation, Zoom suddenly becomes so popular, or even Microsoft Team for meeting and so on. Today we are conducting this seminar or this forum using Zoom platform. It was never the case before, you know, and I think it can be effective. So therefore, technology are normally developed because of certain needs, because of wanting to solve certain problems. And so we have to understand what kind of problem we want to solve, what kind of need we have, then look out for the type of technology that is relevant to us. So yeah, so that is what I can say about in terms of technology.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jordan. In fact, in this COVID-19 period, it is, I think, more relevant right now. Technology, without technology, we cannot survive. That is, we have a realization now. Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Shawman, you would like to say something on that? Mr. Shawman?
Yeah. In China, basically everything is technology driven, and the government always push to all sectors to digitize so that they can, kind of stay ahead and then, adapt new technologies. Coming to our business, we basically work with online retailers specifically. We do not work with the brands. So we try to set up our company the same language what they speak. That means what e-commerce people or e-commerce companies they understand, we also try to speak their language. And vis-a-vis, we also try to upgrade the technology the way they are upgraded. So they consider ourselves that we are at par with them, though we are a supplier, but we try to project ourselves that we are at the same level of the technical, collaboration or upgradation they are having. So that is the way we are thinking that the sourcing can also be evolved with lots of technology infusion. And I would like to share that, what Vijay was saying, that the buying pattern is changing. And we basically work with online retailers where they want lots of SKUs and very smaller quantities per SKU. Because once, if you are a consumer, you want it to go from page 1 to page 10, and then only you get convinced that I will buy something. So you need a huge spread of, styles. So that is the reason, and how fast we can make so many styles, how fast we can make so much of production. So the only way we can upgrade ourselves is adopting new technologies. And I'll show you some pictures But before that, I want to say that we have the 3D technology, what people are already talking. We already have that into action, and we already place that, and our customers do online fitting, and we submit our designs to them almost every week. So every week we submit around 50 to 80 styles to them with actual fabrics, actual draping. So out of that, it's very easy for them just to say yes or no. So as a buyer or as a product development person, they are not really have to go through too many stages. They have the fabric in their hand. We send them well in advance, and they can see how it looks on the photo, 3D photo, and they can say, yes, go for it. So this is the way we are actually reducing the lead time. We as a company offer 45 days design to delivery. So within 45 days, the design is conceptualized, PP sample is made, production is done, and shipment is also done. So we try to work on the time frame. So along with that, when we also, the way e-commerce companies, they send all their website, people come, they make online payments, they select something, keep it in their cart, place the order. So we also adopted the same language, what they speak, what I told you. We have a B2B website where the customers, invitation only, so they can log in, they can select the styles, what they want to buy. Every day the new styles pop up. So they wanted to select what they want to buy. Exactly the same way we check out as a consumer, our customers also check out and they place the order to us. The orders come to us immediately. We send them 3D samples, and then within 1 or 2 days they get approval. With the approvals we get, and then immediately it goes for the production. The prices are also mentioned on the website, so if there is a negotiation required, they mention to us by email, but otherwise everything can be done on the website. So we are not going too much into email to and fro. Then the most interestingly, we have, once the production is done, we have a QC checking app. So in China everything work on WeChat. So we have a WeChat channel where we have a complete app for QC. So we do not really have to go to the factory, because so many styles, we cannot cover so many styles in going to factories. So the factory people, we have this app, and then on the app they put their styles, they fill up all the information, they show the measurements, everything, and then they click to us. Same report immediately goes to customer. So within 1 day, it can cover at least 30 to 40 styles. It's actually very faster way to do the production, handle the production problems. I'll show you some screens, so then it will be more clear to you. Okay, so here you can see. You guys can see the screen?
Yep. Yeah, Shravan.
Yeah. So here you can see there are five, one style in different kind of fabrics. It's already draped. So the fabric is already with the customer, and we can talk to them online that, okay, we have already sent you the styles, different fabrics are there, actual fabrics, which they are going to do the production. So the actual prints, so they can see. So their decision is very immediate. And then when they ask for it, that, okay, I wanted to see the front, back, how it does it look, feel. So we immediately share this kind of videos. So they can see 360-degree completely, and they can make a decision. It's, increase our efficiency almost 80%. Coming to the QC ones, you can see this is the app we have, where this is just, I'm giving you a template where you can put all the details about the inspection, who is the factory, where is the location, who is the inspector name, all this thing details, and then you can keep adding on the pictures, details about the measurements, so on and so forth, on different pages, and they click it and send it to us. So, speed is the key in this business, and we wanted to make sure that with technology we get the speed, and then we deliver to them with, as well as the product on right time, because we have to go as per the trends. And I see, sorry, I wanted to add one more question. I see lots of students, they're asking that, what will be the best way for the jobs and all. I think this is some of the areas you guys should focus, upgrading yourself on the new technology, so that you can enhance your value, and then go for new areas where the job requirements are there. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamin. Vijay would like to say something on it also.
Yeah, Dr. Ranjan, I want to add one point is that since this discussion is focused on Indian retail industry, Indian apparel export industry, and the lower productivity levels that we have in the industry. So I think one point or one attribute for which it is low is because of the positioning of the Indian apparel sector. So how they have positioned Indian apparel sector in the world market is as a high FOB catering to the middle segment of the market. So the thing there is that they have kind of working on higher FOBs, higher margins. So the productivity or efficiencies are not on the priority level, because end of the day, the factory owners are making money even being less, efficient or less productivity levels. So same thing, but in terms of Bangladesh, since I'm in Bangladesh, I'll speak from Bangladesh perspective. So the retailers come to Bangladesh to source their OPP lines, which are called opening price points, which are like the cheapest denim is like £5. So they come and buy those kind of denims, and they buy in big volumes. So to survive that kind of business model, factory has to be very, very, very efficient. And after that also, there are very wafer thin margins. So the survival of the factory is how efficient they are, because the kind of product they're making. Vis-a-vis India, where they're making high FOB, higher margin value, and then they don't give so much importance to efficiencies. And that is also a mindset problem, which is like, okay, we are making enough margins or we are making enough money, so it's okay. But here, if they don't, in Bangladesh, if they don't focus on the efficiencies, they won't survive. So that is also one thing which I think could be a food for thought for Indian manufacturers to either make more money by being more efficient or get into core lines by sort of getting into that kind of competition.
So you mean to say mindset also need to change?
Yeah, mindset.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anjan,
Yes. Anjan.
can I just come in for 2
Yes.
minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at actually what has COVID-19 done to the Indian apparel export industry, it has actually added salt to injury. We need to understand India's global apparel export positioning, like Vijay was mentioning, without COVID-19. If you look at our apparel exports, they're on the decline for the last 2 years. From 2010 to 2016, it was an upward trend for the last 2 years. Our exports and our positioning on the global industry is on the reverse trend. What are the underlying reasons? I think we have all said that, and I just want to put it together, right? Our cost competitiveness compared to the Asian and the new African countries. When I said cost competitiveness, it's a question of your labor costs or your operating costs on the numerator and your efficiencies as the denominator. India has lost its cost competitiveness, number one. Number two, if you look at the trade agreements and the new policies of India in terms of cut down on duty drawbacks, in terms of GST coming into place, they have been the reasons of our low exports for the last 2 years. And third and most important point where I want to actually emphasize, it's time we all, Indian apparel export industry needs to understand that out of our total exports, 58% of our total exports is cotton-based. Only 21% is from man-made fiber. Please understand fast fashion, which is going to be faster, like Vijay rightly mentioned, with shorter lead times and all that. Okay, they're more of the whole share of world apparel exports is more of man-made fiber. But India does not have the competency to do that. So it's time we need to actually diversify our product base from cotton to man-made fibers and more innovative fibers, like Vijay also mentioned, getting into microbial, products and stuff like that. Diversification product. Number two, India's total exports, if you look at, 80% of our total exports is actually limited to US and Europe. We need to really start identifying other markets besides US and Europe. That has to be a top-end strategy for us, besides the digitalization technologies that Jordan and Somen have spoken in detail. Thanks, Ranjan.
Thank you very much, Anjan. Anjan, in fact, I will ask you another question. In fact, in current scenario, Indian apparel export industry will face a new challenge in sourcing. Might be they can face some challenge in sourcing. Perhaps need to reduce dependency on China for the raw materials, and need to find alternative solution in sourcing of raw materials. I mean, do you believe so? Something can happen like this? Then you will say that how the Indian apparel export industry should prepare to develop alternate sourcing base for raw materials. Yes, Anjan.
Absolutely. I mean, not only I believe, the whole world believes that, right? When the outbreak of COVID-19 started in Wuhan, the entire world, which was dependent on China for sourcing, came to a standstill. There are letters from the APC to all the manufacturers in India to, in fact, officially start looking at different sourcing destinations. And that's the point I was trying to make. When India needs to start getting into different sourcing options, it's time we say we built in inherent capabilities. If you look at what China is today, it's because they have said a no to starting from a Google to a Facebook to a YouTube to a any other platform. They have always created an internal need to invent, and it's time that India needs to create dependency of sourcing on other countries and create that inherent need to invent, the necessity to invent our own sourcing options. It will not happen overnight. It will not happen overnight. There has to be a short-term strategy in terms of how do we move out of, how do we not put all our eggs into one basket and have multiple destinations for sourcing. That has to be a short-term strategy. And the long-term strategy is to build in inherent capabilities within the country. That'll be my answer, Ranjan.
I think on this point, sorry.
Yes, tell me.
I think on Anjan's point about building capability within India, I think building the whole ecosystem. So because the India has got enough population, the market is sizable enough itself, just like China. And China has a very complete ecosystem in order to be able to churn out garments very quickly and all kind of style. That's why their export volume is very huge. But bearing in mind is because their internal domestic demand is also huge. I think India has the same advantage as well. The only thing is that India have to really map out what are the weaknesses in this whole industry. Map out the gaps, and then work on those gaps. Is that the raw material? What are the type of raw material we have to source all the way from China? Like during the COVID-19, when it first started in December in Wuhan, the supply chain is cut off. And then your production is come to a halt because you are so dependent on that source for supply of raw materials. So I think India has have the necessary advantage to build further, to strengthen the whole ecosystem, so that they are less dependent on outside supply or accessory, the trim, and so on and so forth. And that is something that the government can play a great role in that, by providing incentives for domestic investment and for foreign direct investment as well. So I think that is definitely something that I think the Indian market can look at. Okay. Also, another point on technology, I would actually GPRO has whole spectrum of digitalization technology available, from pre-planning, IE stuff, line balancing using AIs, and then tracking of the production status and so on, and quality control, machine tracking, asset management. all the way to packing, end to end. Within the whole garment factory, we have those digitalization technology. And we will be quite happy to share it with the Indian markets.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. I think Anjan and both of you have, talking on the same note to, to have a better indigenous facility for, sourcing solution. Mr. Vijay would like to say something on it.
No, I think most of the points are covered. But yes, there is a need which everyone felt when there was a problem in China. And everyone started looking for options in Taiwan, South Korea, India, all these countries. But let's face it, it's not easy. The kind of prices, the kind of flexibility which China offers, even today, if you see in short term, if you see from buyer's perspective, Bangladesh is struggling to control the pandemic. India is struggling to control the pandemic. If you see from the buyer's perspective, without being biased, if he has an option of placing an order right now, unfortunately, it's going to be China as the first choice right now, because they've been able to control it, and we have not been able to control it. So yes, in long term we can look at, but if you see in the short term, it is still advantage China, the way I see it.
But
Okay.
here I have one point to add that,
Yes, Soman. Yes, we were looking forward that you'll be saying something, but in few lines, sir, please.
Yeah, the point is that India is basically actually, if we consider, we are actually having a very big advantage here, because lots of customer nowadays, they are asking for sustainable products. And India is much more ahead in this race in comparison with China or Bangladesh, where, you have the raw materials in-house. So instead of trying to get something which is difficult, we should try the low-hanging fruits where I can get the business immediately. So
Right.
if Indian manufacturers, they focus a lot more on the sustainable products, it can be branded that Indian manufacturing as a sustainable hub. If we can brand it like this way, and then we don't have to be dependent on China, we have the fabrics in-house, we have the designers who can do wonderful designs, we have the plants who are, they are sustainable. So actually we can focus on what we already have with us, instead of, going for something which is difficult. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Soman.
Dr. Ranjan, but most of the dependence that we have on China is when it comes to synthetics, and synthetics is a very, very weak link when it comes to India, for that matter, Bangladesh also. I mean, we have mills making 100% cotton, yarn dye, denims, everything. But when it comes to synthetics, its ultimate destination is China. So until unless there are entrepreneurs who,
That is why Anjan has said that India has to work on that.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with this. Vijay, in fact, I would like to ask you another thing. The biggest challenge in COVID-19 pandemic is to maintain social compliance, and also at the same time, buyers want the manufacturers that they meet the competitive price. My question is how the apparel export manufacturers will address this issue in best possible way.
when it comes to social compliance, it's a given thing. I mean, you cannot negotiate anything as far as social compliance is concerned. Social compliance means workers are paid on time, workers are given enough safe environment. So these are non-negotiable things. So definitely this will be an area of focus, and this will remain as area of priority for the industry. But my take on this is slightly different in a way that, from Bangladesh perspective, or from, I think, most of the countries right now, they have many audits. So social compliance is like if a factory is working with 5 customers, So there are cases where all these 5 customers have different ways of or different audit agencies checking their social compliance, different agencies checking their technical compliance, different agencies taking their security or security compliance. So from that perspective, if we look at a consolidated body which is transparent to all the world retailers, and there should be one audit for the social, one audit for the security, and one audit for the ethical or social or technical audits. So basically, there are 3 kind of audits. One is technical, social, and security. So if we have 3 audits rather than having 3 into, if the factory is working with 5, 3 into 5, 15 audits. So that is my take on this, that we should simplify this process of auditing the factories.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Amit, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I think there are solutions for that. Only thing is buyer accepting those solutions. That's important thing. Like accepting like something like BSCI, SA8000, SEDEX and all. I think these are standard compliances agencies which are accredited and acceptable to a lot of buyers. I think, but still, I think a lot of big buyers, they want their own audit to be done. That is something which is creating a problem. They need to come up with some kind of a thing wherein like they accept these audits, and instead of they coming to the factory, why can't they have a virtual tour of the factory? That I think is the future, because I've done myself in China and in India during the COVID period. I was onboarding a factory, and we did the virtual tour of the factory, and all the documents they had on the Google Drive, and we were able to scan the documents and then have the virtual tour of the factory, and it was closed. And in fact, there are solutions in the industry which are now accepted by certain customers. It's like a front end and the back end both. Like it takes care of sustainability. It takes care of the evidence related to the factory audits and all. So there are softwares like TrueTrace kind of a thing, wherein they actually are accepted by the customer, and factories are coming on board, and they have almost, I would say, around 300 customers working on those things. I think that can be a future wherein, like as Mr. Vijay is saying, that we need to reduce number of audits happening in the factory, because I had seen if the audit happens, your productivity goes down of the factory for that day.
Okay.
I think we need to relook at that kind of things.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Amit. In fact, we are running short of time. We will just discuss one more question, and then we'll like to take some questions from the participants also. I would like to ask Mr. Anjan to answer this. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, there is an anti-China sentiment in majority of the countries, including USA and Europe, which are considered as a major market for apple exports. Now, how Indian apple export industry can capture at least some share of the market, which China might lose in this situation? It's just a speculation. So, I mean, if it is possible. Yes, Mr. Anjan.
Like Vijay mentioned, there is a anti-China sentiment for sure. You have a sentiment on your right hand side. You have a reality today on your left hand side. It will go a long way. How do you balance both, right? I mean, it's just not easy right now. There can be a sentiment, but like Vijay rightly mentioned, okay, the capabilities that the country has built in the last 15 years post the WTO era, starting from 2005 to 2020, they have gone in scale, in terms of flexibility, in terms of capability. They have gone up, I mean, very different. They have gone into a very different scale for us to just, we have to be at the end of the day, have pragmatic approach to business. There is a steady sentiment for sure, but the reality is today, it's just not possible to move out of China. and it will depend on your strategies, short-term strategies and long-term strategies, and your conviction. How do you move out of the current situation to a situation in 5-10 years? China does about $220 billion. We need to always remember India does about 30 odd. 1% revenue loss of China and coming to India is about 8% gain. So the point I'm trying to make, sentiment will be sentiment, but we will still need to have pragmatic approach currently, and moving out of China will only remain as a sentiment.
Okay, okay. In fact, Mr. Amit would like to say something.
I think, like Mr. Vijay has mentioned, important to relook at our pricing strategy and what goes inside the pricing, because a lot of factory, what I had seen in the past, a lot of factory have a lot of fat in the pricing, and the structure of the pricing is being done. There's a corporate overhead, there is a factory overhead, there are a lot of other elements which maybe a style level we are making loss, but at the end of the day business is making profit. That means there are fats available. I think we need to correct that immediately. That is the first thing that we need to do. India being a cotton producing country, we have advantage over there. China doesn't have that advantage. I think Pakistan has that advantage. Bangladesh is converting a lot of cotton now in Bangladesh. It is important that India uses that cotton and makes a flexible shop floor wherein we actually optimize our change over time from product to product and reduce the inefficiencies built in over there. That's the most important thing, because I think the digital world is coming in, and we would need area wherein like we are able to turn out more styles in less time and the volumes are going to be lower then. And then there's one more thing related to innovation. I think we need to innovate in terms of product like healthcare, or the products which has some element of health consciousness in terms of antibacteria, antimicrobial and all. Those kind of a product can be definitely will take a lead to promoting those products will help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In fact, so we will take some questions from the participants. One of the question from the participant is, after COVID-19, I mean, automation will be how much important for Indian apparel industry, where we are depending more on labors, and labor is a problem. If anybody can say.
Yeah, automation is definitely going to be important. But yeah, in addition to automation, I would say it would be combination of automation and digitization. These two things are there. Automation for the production capabilities to increase the productivity and to be more efficient, and digitization to be more faster in decision making in terms of color approvals, in terms of fit approvals, in terms of your production approvals, or in terms of presenting the range to the customer through virtual showrooms. In short term, since there will be no customer visits, so digitization in terms of making virtual tours to the factory are going to be very, very important. So I think it would be a mix of innovation in the technology plus digitization, which could be a winning formula for.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Another question is there, Anjan, if you can answer. Do you think that the masses will be inclined towards antiviral and antimicrobial apparel, and there could be a market for this new category after post-COVID-19? Yeah. Do you think that the masses will be inclined towards antiviral and antimicrobial apparel after post-COVID-19 for ready-made garments? That can be a new category.
Like I touched this subject, the only good thing that COVID-19 is brought to all of us is a sense of health and sense of hygiene, right? There will be a greater demand, and I think a lot of panelists, including Amit, have stressed the need for innovative fibers, innovative fabric, innovative finishes. That will be a big area. And like I touched, when we talk about product diversification, this will be a thrust area, and including this for good, innovative, sustainable medical protective equipments, that will be a big range of product that will be in for the future.
Okay, thank you very much. In fact, as there's a shortage of time, so maybe we have many more questions to answer, but we will take those questions and maybe we can address those questions later on through email for those the participants who are sending. For them, I'm saying, as we draw to a close now, I mean, it's a great honor to thank all those who have helped us in making this webinar such a resounding success. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our honorable panelists for gracing today's webinar and making it interesting and meaningful. Thank you all for your very thought-provoking address, and your presence has made this webinar an enriching experience. I would also like to thank our director, Dr. Pawan Godiawala. I would like to thank all the faculties of Fashion Technology Department, Mumbai, for all their support and encouragement. I would like to thank our students and especially Ms. Sikha Singh for her assistance, and a special mention to our technician team, Mr. Nitin Salve, also professor in DFT department, and his team for helping things run smoothly from the start till the end. Lastly, thank you all who turned up for the webinar today. It wouldn't have been a success without your presence and insightful questions. Thank you all for your cooperation. Thank you very much to all my panelists once again. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.